Okay, we're here this morning at the Fitzies Marina with the Chesapeake Today outdoor studio with Delegate Todd B. Morgan. It says so right on his shirt. That's how I remembered. Todd is the delegate from District what, Todd?
29C.
29C encompasses from the Patuxent.
Covers from just south of the power plant in Calvert down to St. George Island and a very gerrymandered St. Mary's County.
Okay. But you go right across St. Mary's County.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are you the only one that goes across St. Mary's County?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You just ended your session. Is this the third session you've been in up there?
Yes, it was. Third one.
And since winning an election in 2022?
2022.
And you were a three-term county commissioner before that?
That's right.
And you're a Republican?
All those were right.
Okay. Did you vote to raise any taxes this year?
No, we voted against the budget. It's the first time ever that the Republicans in both the House and the Senate have voted against the budget, and they also voted against the BRFA, Budget Reconciliation and Finance Act.
Okay. Are they charging a toll now to leave Maryland to go to Virginia? I mean, they could make a lot of money, don't you think?
That's not one of the things that passed this year. It had been suggested, believe me.
Okay. All right. Is there any mood for Southern Maryland and the Eastern Shore to rejoin Virginia where it originally came from?
I think it would be an idea, but I don't think it's going to make it. Okay. But it is interesting to know from a historical perspective that next week, I think it's April 29th, Maryland or St. Mary's County ceded property to create Anne Arundel County, 1640 or 1650.
Well, that was a good idea to get rid of it when we did.
We did. So Anne Arundel County, thank you very much for being where you are, and we're letting us stay where we are.
Okay. The session. Did you see any bright lights at all, or was just all a bunch of tax hiking, regulation, passing nonsense put on by the Democratic Party?
It was very much towards the beginning, bills that you could work with and get around and find ways to make bad bills better. But then as the budget became more prominent towards the end of the session in the BRFA, it became all about the budget and all about the BRFA.
And BRFA is?
BRFA is you have to have a balanced budget to start with in the state of Maryland. That's the only required constitutional duty we have. But the BRFA is the Budget Reconciliation and Finance Act, and that's where they find the way to balance the budget via taxes and other fees.
Okay. And translated, it means that you're going to tax the living hell out of everybody?
I would say that $1.7 billion in new taxes and fees is a lot of money. I will give the governor, he has a great silver tongue. He says that 94% of Maryland's taxpayers are going to take a tax break. And technically, he's probably correct when they lower the tax bracket from 4.75 to 4.70. So you're going to save maybe $50 or $100 on your tax bill. But that $1.7 billion there to take sure that you don't get to keep it very long.
And they're going to get it from you by raising your fees for auto permits, licenses.
They've got more fees,
registrations,
car registration fees. Ironically, that if you have a kayak, you're going to have to register your kayak now.
Are you kidding?
I'm serious. They're going to now, if you're going to buy new tires at a tire store.
Are they going to have kayak police to go out?
I don't know. I'm sure DNR will find more things to do. You're going to pay more fees for tires, more fees for cars and automobiles. You're going to have more fees on anything that you do in Maryland. That's that simple.
If they are now taxing kayaks, what about children's rubber bath pool ponds in the backyard? How about those?
Those are exempted.
Little blow up.
Those are exempted.
Okay. Water wings for kids?
Exempted. But we have enough other fees in there along the way to make up for water wings for kids and things like that.
What's it like to go to Annapolis and sit there for a bunch of fools in the Democratic Party? How do you stand that on a daily basis?
You just sort of going to take it with a grain of salt. You go up there and the Democrat as individuals really aren't that many bad people up there. It's just that the bills that they push out are just so egregious. In many cases, particularly when it gets to three big issues. First, you have the teachers union. The teachers union believes that they've made it very clear, we want all the money and anything more that you have.
Yeah, but they keep making the kids dumber.
Well, I can't. No one ever said that creating more revenue and putting more money into the teachers union makes kids smarter. We just have to look at Baltimore City for the perfect example of that.
So it's a Teachers Enrichment Act. It isn't actually about education.
I think the teachers are very much concerned with the teachers and their pensions and their money, and the children are the pawns in the game, unfortunately. I will sit there and say then the next group is the environmentalists. They believe everything has to be green. No matter what, we have, and I sit on the Environment and Transportation Committee, so I hear all the environmental bills that go through us.
Can we just nominate some of them for sainthood and get it over with?
I wouldn't go quite that far.
That might make them happy. Venerate them.
As long as the League of Conservation Voters, the Sierra Club, and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation give an X in the box, it's a happy day for them. And that is what it really boils down to, is getting the green vote and having the green X in the box when the scorecard comes out later this summer.
Did they pass a delivery tax?
No, the 75-cent delivery tax got killed.
Who killed that?
I think the Democrats killed it because there was too much anger in the constituencies across the board. They say they're just going to get that thing through and get, you run on getting votes too, and that 75-cent fee was really causing a lot of angst within their party. And our party, it doesn't matter, 75 cents to have a delivery is ridiculous.
Okay, for St. Mary's County, the proposal for a fourth judge, how did that go?
The fourth judge was passed out of judiciary. However, at the end of the day, the Department of Legislative Services came back with their fiscal brief on it, and they said we can't afford it. And there were 13 positions throughout the state that DLS had a negative connotation on, so all those positions were killed, which include the fourth judge for St. Mary's.
Do we need a fourth judge?
I really don't know. I just know that from what I understand, that the courts is bad. Put it this way, we need to get the third judge in place to take Judge Stomp's place. That's critical.
Right.
And I know that there's 4 names that have been pushed through the committee and have gone to the governor, but when the governor will get around to doing the interviews, I have absolutely no idea. The court system is backed up through August right now. There's some tricky mechanics in there. The commissioners that don't have to pay for it this year, they're going to have to sit there and say, how do we get the court system to move faster so things aren't backed up right now? This is April. You wait till August or September to get a trial right now. The system and delays are just too much.
Okay, the county commissioners over the past 4 years or so, they've increased the county debt from around $67 million to pushing $300 million. Okay, and all that is deferred taxation. Deferred spending, and the children and grandchildren have to pay, and meanwhile these guys are blowing money left and right, like $60 million on a sheriff's headquarters, which you need like a hole in the head. You spent $6 million, I think, while you were in office on a sheriff's headquarters on Great Mills Road. That could have funded a lot of deputies on patrol. And that building sits there empty. They had a shooting, a murder across the street. People ran to the building. Nobody answered the door.
Correct.
So do they need a new $60 million headquarters in Leonardtown for them to hide from the criminals?
I'll put it this way. A very good friend of mine was a former commissioner. He said, Todd, when you leave, you can't go back and criticize. Of course, I can sit there and criticize a whole lot of things that they're doing. It's not my place anymore.
Well, it may not be your place, but you're in the delegation. It isn't like you went fishing in Florida.
No, the delegation.
Like Larry Jarbo. You're here.
Okay. And I'm sure Larry's really happy down there in the Keys.
Yeah.
He is. There's some questions that I have with what they're doing up there in Leonardtown.
But they hire lobbyists to go to Annapolis to lobby for them. Isn't that your job?
Yes and no. And I'll give them credit for they pay Mariano $15,000 a year.
Well, he works cheap for them.
He works extremely cheap for them, and he's highly effective. I think one thing that people seem to miss along the way is there's 4 of us up there, and 3 of us are sitting in the house.
Wait a minute, one of you's heading to Virginia, isn't he? He moved his business to Virginia.
Yeah, Delegate Crosby's moved his business to Virginia. But in defense of Mariano, there's 3 of us up there and 6 committees, and on the Senate side there's 1 senator and there's 4 committees. So we can't see everything that goes on along the way. So it's important to have a guy like Bruce, who is effectively able to go to all the other committees and see what's going on, to help lobby for things that are of concern to us at the end of the day. So I think he does a good job to see what's going on and ask questions. They go to Mako, and then Mako, they go home. Now, the concern that I have with Mako is Mako's become more left-wing, over the last few years is its leadership has come from the big 5 counties in the middle, and some of the agendas that they're pushing are not what I would consider to be, favorable to the rural counties.
The county tax rate. The legislature just raised the amount that they can raise taxes.
Yeah, they raised the piggyback tax from 3.2 to 3.3.
That's the income tax.
That's the income tax. So basically,
Okay.
you're going to have they did 2 things. First of all, they came up with a scheme for a graduated tax basis in the state of Maryland. They changed the various categories, so now they're going to tax. There's going to be a higher tax rate for people making $500,000, another higher tax rate for people making over $1 million. But then they did things that were really stupid, in my opinion. They got rid of the inheritance tax. The inheritance tax is what pays the clerk of the court and those people. Then they lowered the estate tax from $5 million to $2 million for deceased people, and Maryland is one of the only 4 or 5 states in the nation that even has an estate tax. Then they came up with a whole bunch of other gimmicks and schemes to grab more money from the people to feed their machine up there. The problem that Maryland has is they just refuse to say no to spending, and that's where I think we will see, in my opinion, a downgrade in Maryland's debt structure within the next 2 months when the big analysts come back, Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, look at Maryland's debt structure, tax records, federal income, and things like that, and we will see, I believe, a downgrade to our state.
Can you explain this proposal, this, I guess, new legislation about solar being mandated in farm areas?
What they did is they're desperate for green energy. And quite frankly, they have not come up with a solution. The solution has been, we're going to turn all the coal power burning power plants off, which they did, and now they don't have any electricity. There's no power. Maryland imports 40% of electricity from out of state. They think the wind in the Atlantic Ocean was going to be challenged by the Trump administration, and solar are the be-all to end-all. Well, what they did is they passed a caveat in the bill this year that says that so many acres, based upon a formula, in priority preservation area, Maryland St. Mary's County has over 150,000 acres of priority preservation area. 5,000 of those acres are going to be dedicated to solar on a non-attributional basis. Meaning, if we have a comprehensive plan and we have zoning, solar trumps that by law. So even if a comprehensive plan says no zoning, if a solar company can come in and find property, they can then put solar up, and we have a 5,000 acre allocation for that under the new law.
So would that be commercial zoning for the solar?
It doesn't have to be so. It doesn't have to be anything. It's preempted. So basically, it could be a farm. Farm is zoned industrial. It could be put on a farm. It can be put anywhere that they want to. But this is a killer for St. Mary's. But the Eastern Shore is going to get whacked to death, because it's easy to put solar farms on all those fields out there, tied into the grid somehow, and say we've met our goal. I think it's preposterous that we turn down nuclear, such as over at Calvert Cliffs. We turn off the power. We turn off the coal burning plants when we can be using other sources of energy. We want to become this great state of industry, manufacturing, quantum, and all that stuff, and there's no power to run it.
Well, the state of Maryland, 50, 60 years ago, bought the Elms property for siting of a nuclear power plant.
Right, and at that particular point in time, if I remember correctly, the commissioners said we don't want it. It went to Calvert County, and now Calvert County has Calvert Cliffs.
Yeah, but we saw that power plant site there. It could still be used.
I'm not smart enough on that to tell you the right answer. Possibly, but I don't know the answer. It'll take 15, 20 years to build a nuclear power plant anywhere. And I think nuclear is the greenest source of energy we can possibly get. Yet
right.
The environmentalists don't like it, and the environmentalists have a lobby that controls a lot of people in Annapolis.
Mm-hmm.
That's that green check mark that you look so favorably upon if you're a Democrat.
So, taxes for Maryland and taxes for St. Mary's County. I mean, you've explained that all of it's going up.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, let's remember, the reason that they had to extend the piggyback tax from 3.2 to 3.3 was all the unfunded mandates that pushed that on the counties. So in many cases, the counties are already at 3.2. So I think the amount of money that St. Mary's County had to pick up this year through the unfunded mandates is about another 2.3 million plus or minus. But when I get to the bigger counties up the road, it was a bigger chunk. And at 3.2%, they could not manage the money. So in typical Annapolis fashion, we're going to increase the piggyback tax so the money gets pushed down to the county, force county commissioners such as in St. Mary's or Calvert to raise that piggyback tax in order to pay the bills.
And did you cut the county back on how much they're allowed to borrow?
What we did is that they came in with a request for $91 million. And we sat down and discussed it, and they had $15 million in unfunded fund balance, unassigned fund balance. So if they had $15 million in unassigned fund balance, that means they had extra money on the books. So instead of giving the 91 they requested, we went in for 76, taking the $15 million out of their unfunded fund balance. So they only have now the authorization to borrow 76, whereas they wanted 91 before.
The Thomas Johnson Bridge, is that thing going to fall in the river?
I would sit there and say that it might fall in the river before it's going to get replaced. Now, I will say that during the summer, I had my Environment and Transportation Committee down here, and we did get to take a tour of the bridge. They're well aware of the problems of the bridge. They got to ride over the bridge, but I don't see any political wherewithal in the Department of Transportation to fund a new Thomas Johnson Bridge until something drastic happens again. And I know that we've gone and looked underneath the bridge, we can still see the rebar sticking out and falling off the cement, but it'll probably take a real tragedy before the state recognizes how bad that bridge is.
Well, to your knowledge, has the state ever sent divers down with underwater cameras to view the support posts down towards the bottom, which is reportedly eroding and got big holes in it?
I've heard that rumor, but I don't know if the state's ever sent anybody down. I do know a couple of companies have contacted me.
Well, out of sight, out of mind,
Yeah, but the companies who do this for a living have contacted me, and we have put them in touch with transportation. I don't think anything's come of it, though.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll know if it just falls down one day.
If we see a couple of big chunks in a boat, then we'll know. Yeah, it'll be very apparent.
I mean, it isn't like we really have shipping going up and down the river to run into the bridge like it happened to the Key Bridge, but it wouldn't be the first time a major bridge in Maryland dropped into the water.
Well, we have concerns with the Key Bridge.
Happened last year.
And hoping that nobody ever hits the Bay Bridge either.
Yeah, it's because it's the same problem.
Correct.
And in 2015, Governor Hogan established a new commission to study a third bay crossing, and they spent millions of dollars. Took, I think, 6 or 7 years to come up with the idea that we really can't build another bridge. It would have to be built right in the same place where the existing two spans are.
They had actually. I agree with you on that one. That was crazy. I remember that one of the studies had a bridge coming out down here in St. Mary's County, in Calvert County, going across, and they got a Navy base out here which flies airplanes. They're going to put a bridge out here. And he said, but like you said, the study they've done, I think they probably spent $20 or $30 million studying where to put a new Thomas Johnson Bridge.
Right.
I mean, we spend money on studies that never go anywhere. So if they want to study where a new Bay Bridge has to go, we know it's only one logical place, which is up to Annapolis over to the eastern shore. And same thing with the new bridge for Thomas Johnson. I mean, there's only one place to put it.
Well, then there's the yahoos that want to have netting to catch people jumping off the bridge. So maybe they should just build a shorter bridge so people can't dive over it. I mean, never heard of anybody committing suicide off the Benedict Bridge.
No, but the discussion has been made for a long time about a new bridge for St. Mary's to Calvert, and it would have to be significantly lower because the only thing we have to worry about right now is how high the biggest sailboat could be.
And the reason the bridge was built high in the first place was we had the Navy Pier, and we had perspective because of the very deep water in the Patuxent close up to Myrtle Point, was a port being built there. We
could have built a port there, and you had to worry about the height of the bridge and radar towers on big Navy ships coming up the river. That was probably just the premise behind why the bridge is 135 feet tall.
Right. Okay. So we could actually just go back to a drawbridge, right?
I don't think a drawbridge would work too well when the water's 140 feet deep underneath.
Okay. All right. Can you think of anything else that you'd like to talk about we haven't asked you about yet?
No, I think you've done a good job. I think that we, the citizens, have to pay attention to what's going on, and I think that we try to put our newsletters out once a week to inform you of what we see going on. I think people, because everything and all the politics is local, so please pay attention to what we're doing up there. I know it's 90 days of it's helter skelter for us, and I think you can always feel free to contact us at any time for needs and concerns that we can help you with.
Okay. Well, this is Ken Rosignol of the Chesapeake Today at Fitzies Marina with Delegate Todd Morgan. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good day. Have a good day, guys.
Okay.
Nice weekend.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.